You ready? Test seven, test seven. Okay. We should be good. The stream is live.
presentation. See, I was sitting here like everything was all good and done. We're not done.
Welcome, everyone, to this Committee of the Whole meeting of the Shippensburg Area School District. We still new to how we should run our Committee of the Whole meetings. I believe that we have minutes that are not presently attached to the agenda, but will be attached. Is that correct?
Correct.
Minutes from our last meeting. And tonight for our agenda, we have three items on our agenda for discussion. We first have a presentation from Shippensburg Area Middle School, a presentation on Club Day. Then there will be some budgeting led by our business administrator, Mrs. Christy Lentz. And then finally, an update on facilities options by the superintendent. So, Bill, I'll let you sort of guide us forward.
Absolutely. I'm really excited and thankful to the middle school administration for coming this evening and the students they've brought with them. This is something that I was really excited about, and I know the building is as well. So I'd turn it over to Mr. Barnes and his team to talk a little bit about what's going on at the middle school.
All right, I can hear my echo, so I know that this is on. So thanks for the opportunity to come talk to you guys. Jeremy Barnes, the building principal. And to my left, I have my other two bosses, the assistant principals, Mrs. Barnhart and Mrs. Fitz. Whenever I need in line, I give a helpful hand and keep me grounded. So we also have a couple students and one of our teachers from the middle school to come talk a little bit about clubs. But I think most importantly, I think it's important just to know why we chose to do clubs. This is our first year as administrative team at the middle school, and one of the big to-dos for us was make connections with our students and staff. And we thought this is a way outside of the academia world that we would have an opportunity to have our students meet our staff and meet other students in different grades and to develop positive and healthy relationships amongst the school. So that was our biggest to-do, and I think so far we've accomplished that. Mrs. Fitz and Mrs. Barnhart behind the scenes have spent hours trying to figure out how we're going to get this come to fruition. And to this point, we're having clubs one time a month. And the teachers signed up for some of their hobbies and some of their interests. And from that point, we had a survey go out to all the students, and we're happy to say that all 800 of our kids had 1, 2, or 3 choices they chose, and all of our kids were able to get in a club that has one of their choices. So I'm just going to read through some of the clubs. I don't know which one as a former middle school student I would choose, so you guys can be thinking in the audience, can be thinking about what they may choose. But some of the clubs we had to have two leaders because there was such popularity when it came to our kids wanting to join those clubs with the teachers. So we have 2 animal clubs, animation, art of film, 2 baking clubs. They make some pretty good cupcakes they found in the office last month. That was quite popular. Board games, book club, card games, challenge buddies, chess, cosplay, digital music composition, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, FFA, which they've already connected to the high school, and they're going to continue working together with the FFA club here. Fishing, we have some behind-the-scenes activities for the fishing club with Mr. Weller and Mr. Keene. Also, another fishing club is our fly fishing with Mr. Weber. Gardening, golf club, historical reenactment, intramurals, Connect Club, movie makers, multicultural club, nature club, origami, personal fitness, photography, puzzle and card games, random acts of kindness, Sam's community service, school beautification, scrapbooking, slime and craft activities, and walking for causes. So, when you create activities for our kids and our staff to participate, sometimes you're not able to pick and choose what you think might be another outcome. And probably one of the best things that's coming out of this that I wasn't able to predict, maybe April and Steph were able to. It's just the connections we're able to make to the community. We've had a lot of volunteers come in and talk about some of the animal clubs and how our kids can donate, how our families can help out with giving blankets. FFA, as I said, we're connecting with the high school. A multicultural club, Mrs. Curtis, one of our social workers in the district, is connecting with some other outside agencies to potentially have a culminating activity in May to bring different activities and people to talk about our differences amongst ourselves, not just with ethnicity and race, but also bringing diversity when it comes to physical needs as well. So there's a lot of opportunities that our students are kind of driving this one time a month when they're meeting with the staff. So I think we're on our way. One of our next to-dos is to increase the frequency of our clubs. So I've already told the staff next year we're going to meet 2 times a month. And I think this is just kind of getting our feet on the ground and figuring out what we need to do, what's gone well, how we can look and reflect and make this an improvement for our students and staff next year. So over the summer, Mrs. Fitz and Mrs. Barnhart and I will create a schedule that we can share with our staff so they know coming into next year what that's going to look like with our club days. So I'm excited for where we're going. I'm excited for the opportunity to do that, and eventually there's going to come a time that, probably not tonight, but I'll put a bug in your ear with Mr. August and Mrs. Lentz, that we're going to try to raise some money for the clubs, because it's not necessarily cheap to be able to do this, but the teacher's been working with myself and the other administrators to try to find a way that we can get a little bit of money for them to get it off the ground. So I do have some students that want to talk to you a little bit about their experiences so far, so they'll come up here and introduce themselves, and they'll talk a little bit about the clubs they selected and maybe why.
Hi everyone, I'm Sophia Kyle, and I'm part of the photography club at Sam's. I picked the photography club to join because it's something that I'm interested in, which I think is the best part about the clubs, is that there's such diversity that everybody can get to be in a club that has something they're interested in. And one of my favorite parts is that I got to meet new people that have similar interests as me, and then I also got to learn that some of my friends also like photography. And we get to explore the different types of photography. Like last time we learned how to find letters and things around the school. Like we found an E in the grooves on the walls and an R in a painting. And the clubs are really great for working and meeting with people from different grades.
Hi, my name is Aiden Kirkpatrick, and I chose the golf club. I chose the golf club because it was something that I was interested in, and I haven't been able to really do golf before. Mr. Zach and Mr. Horgus are the ones that run golf club, and they teach us how to play golf, and they also teach us how to chip and putt.
I'm not too sure if Mr. Horgus is listening, but I hear he's a scratch golfer, so he's going to have to show anyone else in the room, including myself, how to do the putting and chipping, because that's one of the worst elements of my game as well. So that's the middle school clubs, unless Mrs. Barnhart or Mrs. Fitz have anything that I'd be remiss to mention. Any questions or anything from the school board?
I have one. Are you thinking about getting a program where kids can rate, be announcers at sporting events, on the program? I don't know how I want to say it. In the basketball game, they do the
Like the broadcasting? Or, yeah. I think that would be a great opportunity. I mean, that's probably something we could probably continue to add on to this. We have a couple clubs that are connected to sports, but I can tell you most of our kids have mouths that are loud enough that they might not need, especially in the hallways after lunch and on the way to first period. I don't know that we need a microphone for some of that stuff, but I mean, that actually would be a great one that we'd be able to do. And I tell some of them, if the whole principal thing doesn't work out for me, I think that's my next gig too. So I might have to run that club next year.
feed them like they in junior high, and when they go to high school, just they get the courage to go out in public, speak, and everything like that. Just wondered if that's an option.
No, I think it is, and we have two different teachers that work with some of our school leadership. Actually, Mrs. Kirkpatrick is behind me. She's one of the teachers that came from the middle school today. She runs our student council, and then Mrs. Krebs operates our PBIS team. So I threw it out to those two groups to see if they'd want to come in. So they're continuously trying to build on some of the leadership capacities that our students have. So that's certainly another area that we can look into. That's a good thought.
I'll just tell you, as a mom with a middle schooler, and you already know this, you got the email the day Lily came home and was so excited. She busted through the door and was like, "The clubs are coming back!" And I'm just excited. You know, she's in the photography club as well, and she's just super excited for the opportunity to try something new. And I know a bunch of her friends, same thing. They're all in different types of clubs. Some that they have no experience in, like baking. Would not be in a baking club.
Yeah.
But I just appreciate you guys working really hard to bring this back to the middle school.
Just want to share, I'm super excited that clubs are back, and I'm really happy to hear that the clubs have evolved over the years. I was in the recycling club. So I'm glad to hear there are better options.
Yeah. I forget, it was used to back in the day. I think we maybe went to different middle schools. It was kind of the same thing, the recycle, reuse, and there was another read that was part of that. I forget what it was, but yeah, I think those clubs took the big green barrels around each homeroom and picked. Yeah, I
was
remember.
me.
I remember those times.
Good times.
Yeah.
So I would just ditto the rave reviews from a middle schooler who came home. Have you done it once or twice?
We just finished our second in February, so we'll continue. We have 3 more: March, April, and May.
So rave reviews from at least one 11-year-old.
Good. Well, there's a lot of things we thought about the positives that come with it, but it is neat we're able to create a schedule that basically be a 1-hour early dismissal. Although we're not dismissing early, that's when we start our clubs from 1:30 to 2:30, and we try to have it on a Friday, so when the kids go home, they can have some dinner talk to their families about kind of what they participated in, and just kind of hope the excitement builds for the next month. But we had to start small, but as Mr. August says, we have to. I think it's swing big, miss big. So that's kind of what we're doing for next year, and I hope it continues to evolve. Who knows what the teachers might sign up for next year? But I mean, we have some really neat and innovative ideas. And if we need to add the recycling club in for Mrs. Eberly next year, I'm sure we could have her come back.
I think she should volunteer for it.
Yeah.
Swing big, miss big sounds like my golf game.
Yes. Well, you can join Aiden here at the end of March. We have about 40 kids in that club, and if you're like me, a novice golfer, we need to be outside in front of the middle school and take up that whole grassy area, because we certainly don't want anyone getting hit. But I actually will send out the schedule to Mr. August, and then certainly if you guys are you're welcome to join us at the end of the month in March, and certainly April and May. But I appreciate the time and allowing us to come meet with you and talk with you.
Thank you. We appreciate it too.
I just want to thank Mr. Barnes and the entire administration and staff. Students, thanks for coming tonight. I think things you've heard, student choice, passion, connections, this is all what we want for our students. And I just would continue to push that we have this more frequently, because it makes a difference, and it really is what brings our kids to school. So thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.
You're up.
Good evening. Moving on to our budget update for this evening. We are going to look at the governor's budget address. I'm going to share highlights from that address, in particular what has an impact on school districts, and then to start a deeper dive into areas within the budget. So tonight, looking at salary benefits and our cyber charter school cost. So starting with highlights from the governor's budget. So the governor indicated he wants to increase public education funding. $567 million for our basic education funding and $104 million for our special education funding. So what does that mean for Shippensburg Area School District? So for our basic education funding, should the governor's proposal come to fruition, that would bring in Shippensburg School District an additional about $1.3 million, or just shy of 11% increase in our basic ed funding. And then for special education funding, that would be about an additional $207,000, or a 9.5% increase. Just wanted to point out, though, that recently there has been legislation introduced. It's House Bill 114, which would eliminate the hold harmless and would fully implement the new basic education and special education funding formulas. However, at this point, I'm not sure if this would be, if Shippensburg would be positively or negatively impacted by that legislation should it be approved. Additionally, from the governor's budget, he indicated that he wants to give $100 million across the state for school mental health support grants. So what would that mean for Shippensburg? School districts get a minimum allocation of $100,000, but because of our ADMs, we actually get a little bit more. So our district would get about $138,000. Again, should the governor's proposal be approved by the legislature. He's also wanting to give $100 million to school districts for safety and security grants through PCCD for physical security. At this point, allocations have not been released, so I don't know if we would be allocated that money or if it would be a competitive grant process. So as I learn more information on that, I will share that. He also wants to put into place a matching grant program for school environmental repairs and upgrades, $100 million for that program. That would expand the existing work of DEP and PennVest. Again, don't have a lot of details on this. I'm not sure how this will play out, if it'll be a competitive grant process or districts would receive a set allocation. He has also recommended a universal free breakfast for all students in the 23-24 school year, again, as well as any students that qualify for free or for reduced paid lunch would actually get their lunches for free. Again, this is just the governor's proposal. It would need to pass the legislature as well. And then another impact that we could feel, at least here at Shippensburg School District, is he proposed to increase the minimum wage to $15 per hour. Currently, for our support staff, our minimum starting rate is $12 per hour. So if that would go into play, that could be an impact on our finances as well. And then, as I had shared last year, per the Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators, historically, districts usually only receive, or the legislature only approves about 25 to 30% of the governor's budget proposal. We're hoping not this year. We're hoping that we get more than that for what the governor proposed.
Christy, when he says $15 an hour, is he gonna put up some money? Or this all lip service?
Say that again?
$15 an hour.
So I maybe can answer that.
I agree with it, but it's a lip service, or he gonna put up some money?
So probably not. But you know, governor's budgets are often value documents, and you know they're kind of aspirational, and then you know the politicking happens, and then obviously we get to the reality. So I would not say that they're going to supplement our ability to pay that in any way.
Okay.
Okay, so at the last budget meeting, I had presented an overview of our 23-24 budget expenditures. So just showing this a different way, instead of showing you the dollar figures, I'm showing you in terms of percentage of where our expenditures lie. So just remember, in education, we're a service industry, so the majority of our costs are people, it's not a product. So as you can see, 67% of our expenditures are for salary, wages, and benefits. So that only lets 33% for all other costs, including our contracted services, outside placements for students, cyber charter, supplies, transportation, maintenance of our buildings and grounds, debt service, and anything else that's not personnel related. So just keep in mind that 67% of our expenditures are personnel related. So diving in a little bit deeper to our salaries. So at the last budget meeting, I had shared that we projected our salaries to go up by about $1 million. So breaking that down into a little bit more detail, where you can see the greatest expenses is in just our regular salary and wages for all classifications, so admin, professional staff, support staff. And then we do have some substitutes that we don't contract with, like our teachers, day-to-day, we contract through ESS, so that's actually in our contracted service line item. But like substitutes, we have our long-term substitutes for teachers that we pay that are our employees. Our support staff substitutes we pay here at the district. So you can see that's a small amount that we're projecting to go up. And then we have the extra earnings line item for overtime, leave payouts, and those type of items. But again, the biggest chunk of our salaries, the increase is in just our regular wages that we are contractually have agreed to pay. So then in terms of our benefits, there is a list, a breakout. I'm not going to read each one, but as you can see at the last budget meeting, I indicated that we're at this point projecting benefits to go up by about $700,000. The largest portion of that is our medical benefits. Right now we're projecting just shy of a $400,000 increase. Next week, I think it is, our consortium, our healthcare consortium will be meeting to set the final rate on that. I'm hoping the final rate will come in under the 6.5% that I budgeted for. If not, we may have to add to that line item, but I'm hoping we can take funds out of that line item. And then the next two biggest benefits is our Social Security and retirement. And although our Social Security rate stays flat for next year and the retirement rate decreases for next year, we're still seeing an increase in those line items just because it's a direct line to an increase in our salaries. So as our salaries go up, so is the retirement and Social Security expenditures.
So are these increases because salaries are going up, or are we hiring more people, or is it both?
It's a combination of both.
Both.
So I just wanted to touch base. At the last meeting, I had commented that the PSERS employer contribution rate declined slightly for next year. So you can see there's the historical chart from 2011 to what we're projecting for 23-24. So it's set at 34%. It dropped slightly from 35.26%. And then off to the side, you can see what the budgeted expense was. But what I wanted to show in the chart is although we dipped slightly for next school year, after the red line is the projected expenditures, and PSERS is still projected to go up in future years, still at a smaller incremental rate than it has in the past, that you can see that we spiked up in the past from the 2011-12 to about the 2016-17 school year, and then we kind of leveled off in the 30% range. So taking a look at our cyber charter school costs. So I'm not going to go over the history. It's there. I'll just hit like some of the highlights. So back in the 2012-13 school year, we had about 95 students enrolled in outside cyber charter schools. 77 of those students were in regular education, 18 students were in special education. And then you can see jumping down to the yellow line item, that was last school year that we completed, the 21-22 school year. We had 175 students enrolled, 124 were regular education, and 51 were special education. And we paid out just shy of $2.7 million in cyber charter schools. I am pleased to report that for the current school year, we have dropped slightly. We have currently 164 students enrolled, 119 are regular education students, 45 are special education students. So we're projecting just under 2.5 million expenditures for this year. So for next year, how I came up with that rate of 2.7 million, I took the current year enrollment. I added 2 students in each regular ed and special education in case we do have some students that would decide to go out to outside cyber charter schools. As well as down below, you can see what the tuition rates have been historically. And then I estimated a 5% increase in 23-24 because our tuition rates usually go up year over year. So that's how I came up with an estimate at this point of about 2.7 million. In the current preliminary budget, I had it $2,766,000. So at this point, I'm saying we can remove just shy of $54,000 in our outside cyber charter school.
Just to comment on that briefly, yeah, obviously that is a variable number that we do not have control over. And so, I think being on the higher side allows us to at least maybe reallocate that money should they not come to fruition.
How many of those, Mr. August, of those 164 students, have their families been contacted regarding, like, what would it take, or what are those concerns to bring those students back to face-to-face learning?
So I think Sherry has the answer, but I would just comment before she does. Very difficult to reach out to a lot of that population. They don't tend to respond back. So I know in a previous life, our attempts to reach out were not all that successful because they've kind of made their decisions and they're happy in their with their situation. But Sherry.
Yeah, so our virtual coordinators reach out twice a year. We get a listing of the students from Joanne. Well, now I guess it's not Joanne, it's Lori, but we get a listing of the students in the external cybers, and they try to make calls. Sometimes they're successful. I'd say probably about 20% of the time they're successful in actually connecting with a person. And then from that 20% of the time, they talk to them about our program and what our program offers. And they win back some of them, but obviously not all of them. One of the things that they do talk about for why they like to choose the program that they're in is synchronous instruction. So some of the vendors that we utilize have started offering synchronous instruction as well. And our virtual coordinators do schedule students to come in and get some of that instruction and support from them. So I know our high school virtual coordinator constantly has students in his office. In fact, that's one of the things he's stationed to come into my office, so he has more room for those students, as well as our elementary virtual coordinator.
Yeah, I think it's really highlighting what our district has to offer in terms of extracurriculars. You just heard about clubs. There's in-person connections that we can have, and connections they make with their friends, in our buildings.
Could we just say that even more stronger? Just a quick outline of what the benefits of our program are versus the charter schools, just so that it's repeated again to the public.
In those conversations, I'm sure we do, but we can certainly shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah, so I mean, our program, one, you are a district student, so you can come on to our field trips. So even if you're attending virtual learning, anytime our students go on field trips, our virtual students are invited along to participate. Obviously, they can be part of our athletics and our clubs and our activities because they are district students. Again, they can come in here and receive that small group or one-on-one support from our virtual coordinators. They do blended learning, so we have a lot of students that do some classes virtually and come in person to have other classes. So if you're strong in math and science, you can do that virtually, but if you struggle in language arts and social studies, you can come in and have that in person. So it has a lot of flexibility to really meet the specific needs of the students.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Woodall, that with our program, they actually graduate with a Shippensburg degree.
Yes, that is true. So our program, you graduate, your degree says Shippensburg Area School District. It doesn't say Shippensburg Area Virtual Education. It says you're a district student because you are a district student.
I feel like you need to clip exactly what she just said out, make a video of that, and really publicize that. Because I don't think a lot of people know what our district offers when they choose our program.
Ditto.
It's a struggle every public school is facing, and I think we're across the state working hard to communicate with those families and show them the benefits of being a Greyhound.
Yeah, and something too that we've tried starting to do, like last summer, our virtual coordinators attended some of the community events over the summer to hand out information and pamphlets to families, because not all families know that Shippensburg Area School District offers our own virtual academy. So they've been helping out with that and going out into where the community gathers to just let them know, hey, we have our program here, so we can get them before they go out. And that even though our numbers are going up, that seems to help with the sieve a little bit for students who don't realize that we offer our own programming, or for families that don't realize that we offer our own programming here, catch them before they go out.
There are also just bigger Harrisburg policy issues that make this extremely problematic.
Absolutely.
Out of our control.
Something I think Mrs. Eberly may have spoke to at a rally recently. And you know, to be fair, you know, those outfits, you know, that they do a fairly good job advertising and have a lot more resources to do so.
Okay, moving on, just as we were just talking, we have our own, what I'm going to say, in-house cyber charter school. So we call it SAVE, or we use the capital area online learning, correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Woodall, to help with the curriculum of our internal program. So there you can see the history from the 15-16 school year to what we're budgeting for 23-24. We are budgeting a slight reduction for next school year of about $32,000. So that will be removed from our total expenditure line item. So where does that bring us? At the last budget meeting, I had showed you revenues with no tax increase is about $62.3 million. Still haven't changed any revenues at this point. Do not have any concrete news to change the revenues as I previously presented. But then we had presented expenditures on February 13th of about $65.6 million, removing, or because we updated the outside cyber charter school and our in-house charter school. That takes the expenditures as of to date down to about $65.5 million, brings our deficit to about $3.2 million. If we would raise taxes to the index, that would bring in about $1.27 million. Using $400,000 of fund balance for our 7th grade teaching positions, that brings us down to a revised deficit of about $1.56 million. And should we get everything that the governor proposed for BEF, or basic education funding and special education funding, that would bring in about $1.52 million. So that would almost close our deficit if we could get what the governor proposed, but we still have a lot of work to do in terms of positions that we need to add into our budget as well. And of course, capital projects.
So while we probably can't count on exactly that number, I think with the recent lawsuit declaring, you know, inequities in funding, I think there is probably some motivation at the state level to bump that up and get us closer to that number.
So just keeping the budget timeline in front of you, we'd like the board to approve a proposed final budget no later than May 8th, to allow 30 days in between, at least 30 days in between the proposed and the final budget adoption, which we would ask that you do that no later than June 12th. Is there any other questions?
I think I just heard you mention it, but you said about budget request. Did you just mention that?
Correct.
Like staffing?
Correct.
Perfect, because that was the worst part for me last year. Do you know roughly when we get that?
We're going to work on that as soon as possible. You know, I would like to say the next board meeting. Looking at Christy's face, probably indicating not.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll try, but we'll try to get it to you sooner rather than later.
Sounds good.
Those are true value decisions that we have to make in terms of where the priorities are. You know, we have widespread needs, you know, that have been well documented, you know, in my short time here.
When the sooner we get that one need taken care of, that'll be what we discussed about personnel.
I'm sorry, Mr. Scott.
The sooner we discuss that one thing with personnel that we discussed today, the sooner we get that started and finished, that'll affect the budget. Then, Chris, you have a better idea.
Correct, and that is part of what it takes some time for us to kind of put that plan together. Any other questions? Okay, so this process continues. You know, we'll continue to keep you informed and put what you need to make decisions in front of you.
Thank you, as always, Mrs. Lentz, for your excellent presentation of all of these details.
Excuse me 1 minute. maybe it's next, maybe I'm supposed to ask it, what is this?
So, our policy says that if you, I think it's the abstention form. Is that what you have in front of you?
Yeah.
If you're going to abstain from a voting item in the regular meeting, that should be completed beforehand, and you should publicly state why you're abstaining from an item.
Oh, I like that. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So last time, our continuing progress towards solving or addressing our facilities continues. You may remember at the last meeting we talked about a number of options. My goal is always to move the process forward. We have a lot of needs, but I think the most important thing is to continue to build on that progress.
You have the clicker.
Oh, even better. So just some context for the board and the audience. We have a number of facility-wide issues that are system-wide, which is kind of rare. A lot of districts don't have to address elementary through high school and athletics, kind of all in one big bite. But nonetheless, that is where we are. And so we need a plan that takes into consideration all of those things and is a viable means to move forward. So that's what we're trying to find is the best solution, as there is no perfect solution for us to move forward. The other issue to consider for the board is that time is important, even though these facilities have not been addressed, in a timely manner, so to speak. The time, what I mean by this is that the quotes that we have and the construction costs and the borrowing are what I'm basing this information on. And so that those things can change, and that changes our calculus on these things. So there is some urgency to find a path forward with the numbers that we know, so that we don't have to recalculate things. And it's not starting at zero, but it just recalculates. I don't predict the future, but I don't know that construction costs are probably coming down. And I don't know that interest rates currently are looking to do that as well. Okay, so the challenge that we have, and it's really, as I thought about what we're trying to solve, it's not one or the other. We want to reduce class sizes, but we also want to improve our facilities. Those questions are locked together because we can build classrooms in order to reduce class size. However, they don't come with teachers. And both the borrowing to get those classrooms and the teacher salaries are ongoing costs. So we need to kind of thread the needle on how we move forward to be able to account for both of those. Just a reminder from our enrollment study done by EI, we are projected 325 students per class by the end of the decade, in 10 years, decade time. So the thing we need to think about is we need the facilities that allow us to deliver our educational and athletic programs. And currently we are probably deficient in at least some of those areas. And some of those areas are coming to the point where we don't have a choice. We will either have to eliminate a program because, for example, the track would not be viable in 2 years' time. I put this in front of you because the last time I was here, we talked about realignment. And I want to be clear that I understand that is not currently a direction that the board wants to go. That's fine. But I do want to point out it would be, I feel like I need to do my due diligence to make sure that we're completely sure about what that means. So I did a little math equation here. Realignment equals less construction. In the models that I showed, 12 classrooms with realignment, 16 without. Each classroom cost approximately $670,000. And yes, that number is ridiculous, but that is the cost, unfortunately. Less construction means that we have more money for staff and positions. So realignment could equal more money for staff and positions. I don't say that. I'm not here to talk about realignment. I'm here to let people know that is the reality, okay? So I've heard from the board that that's not the direction we want to go. So I went back with Christy and realigned our approach in order to find a viable way forward without realignment.
Excuse me 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
When you say you heard from the board, did we vote?
So when we did the canvassing, I only had 4 folks that were willing to consider those, and there was some changing of mind over time. So currently, it's my understanding that there is not a board majority to move forward with realignment. I met with the elementary staff last Monday to review all the options and to talk about realignment and let them know that I did not feel that there was much motivation to move forward in that direction. Having said that, Mr. Scott, there is a way forward that works and it is viable, without realignment. And I understand all the difficulties that come with realignment. However, there is a way forward. And so I want to talk briefly about what those options were, just to remind the board. I'm not going to belabor the point. Option 1 was realignment with additions with a $36.8 million borrow, and then additional funds of about $3 million needed to get to those 12 classrooms at the elementary level. Option 2 was realignment only, which is really a $30 to $31 million borrow. We either could not borrow that money or borrow that money for other projects. What I'm proposing this evening as an option really kind of centers around that option of a lesser borrow, really combines options 2 and 4. So, option 2 is pretty self-explanatory. In and of itself, it doesn't help us. All it does is allow us to balance classrooms across a building, and it doesn't really reduce class sizes. Option 3 is the moving 3rd grade out to SACE. That is a $36.8 million project to get. Reminder, what we're getting with that is the high school, the middle school, and athletic upgrades. We would need an additional $8.8 million to fund that. Option 4 is no realignment with additions, which is really kind of where we're moving eventually. So $36.8 million to build 16 classrooms. We're going to need to find an additional $5.7 million to get there. So just to look at what we're talking about here with that option 4, no realignment. You can see, we've kind of seen this picture a couple times. We're getting, the blue in the middle school is already under construction. Oops, sorry. The purple would be what we would be adding. We get an expanded cafeteria in the high school and some what we hope is collaborative space. We get some additional classrooms off the back for family consumer science and potential STEM labs. And we get upgraded additional construction for performing arts. And then the teal are the upgrades to the gym, the entryway, and some of the athletic facilities inside the building, as well as the kitchen realignment and upgrade. Okay, so what I'm calling option 5, I may have communicated to you as option like 2.1, but the more I thought about it, it's really option 5. Okay, so I call it no realignment, continued progress. So it's got some things that the board needs to remember. Our current debt service is roughly $3.4 million. That is the money that we pay for debt currently. The good news is that we don't have $3.4 million worth of debt service. And so we have far less than that, and we have been able to pull that money over to build up additional construction funds, okay? We essentially have some savings that we've built in for future projects. So option 5 really tries to maximize and still utilize that idea of not borrowing to our maximum so that we have some room to be able to put money into a capital fund project to get to the building classroom numbers that we need. So just looking down there really quick, the high school upgrades are 22.6, middle school is 2 million. That includes $1 million for contingency issues, athletics. So this is the part that we have to kind of thread the needle on and get continued progress on. So with athletics, I just received this evening from K&W a revised proposal that fits under under $5.5 million to get us a upgrade, a track, an athletic turf field, infrastructure, and bleachers for less than the number that you may remember I initially presented. I was looking to find $1 million out of that kind of core package in order to make this work, and K&W was able to do that. Okay, so that borrow would be somewhere around $30 million. $30 million. That would allow us a future borrowing capacity of somewhere around $6.7 million that we could still borrow and keep, and this is the key term we're going to circle back to, level debt service. Okay, so you've heard, you saw the budget presentation, we have needs, we've talked about other areas that we have to fund. This gives us the ability to borrow that money and not add any additional cost to that line item in our budget. So under this model, we would be looking at some more, the difference between what we spend on debt service and what we actually owe on debt service would be about $400,000. That, which comes over to the other side, allows us to continue that idea of putting money aside to get to the additional money that we're not able to borrow to get those additional classrooms. Okay, the good news, as you'll maybe see, is that we would maybe even be able to fund a few positions out of that debt service savings that I'm calling. Okay, so really option 5 comes down to kind of another decision point, as if we did not have enough, is the idea of the question of pre-K. Pre-K currently occupies 3 classroom spaces in our building. I very much would love to continue that relationship. It's good for our kids. They eventually are our kids. However, there's a cost benefit to it that we're going to have to make. So if we decide to move forward with this option, the next decision point is, do we keep pre-K? And that, in order to do that, we have to find $11 million. So here's how we get to that $11 million. I'm sorry, my pointer's not working well on this. So we do have some monies from the flagship Proud Fund and the capital projects that, the bad news is stuff still breaks, and we need a healthy capital projects fund to be able to address those things. So this is not pulling all of those monies over, but we have been able to add to that, and this is pulling over a number from that capital projects fund that Christy feels is okay to do. That gets us to roughly $300 million, or $3 million. We're looking at, if Christy's numbers are correct, about $1 million in surplus from this year's budget that we can put into this growing fund, and that makes our borrow $5 million to get us to the 11 that we need. So that $5 million, if you remember from the previous slide, is under what our borrowing capacity is, so that we would have some monies from that debt service savings that we could put towards positions. The right side of the slide is what happens if we remove pre-K. In that case, we don't need as many classrooms, and we would have a need for $9 million to address the elementary phases. So, an important key piece of this is on the left side, in order to get to that $11 million, we have to save up 5 years to get that $2 million. So either way, we're looking some extended time to be able to address the elementaries. The right side, because of the number is smaller, our borrow will be smaller. We only have to save up for 3 years before we could begin the project. Those numbers stay the same, other than our borrow, rather than being 5, is more like 3. And as you may understand, we have significantly more monies to put towards positions to fill those classrooms. So this is kind of the hybrid, no realignment, but still address the elementary needs. Remember, we're blessed with enrollment that is projected to steadily increase. Okay, so there are some internal things we would be able to do to get that space if we need it between the time when we decide to do this and we begin to address the elementary classrooms. Okay, so questions and discussion.
Can I ask a pre-K question?
Sure.
So pre-K is currently housed at Nancy Grayson, right?
In Bird.
It's at both?
Yes, sir.
And that's run through, is that run through Head Start on?
Yes, sir.
Do we have any sense of where they would go if we go with the option?
We do not. We just received, so I did communicate with the director just to kind of give them a heads up. To my mind, we don't need to move on this immediately. So I'm, they do 1-year contracts with us. For next year, they're welcome to be back for next year at least.
So they would have either 3 or 5 years to figure this out. Is that
correct?
Interpreting this right?
Correct.
Yeah. It's hard to kick out pre-K kids.
It is. It's not something that we.
Numbers don't lie. It's a very tough.
We are trying to thread several needles at the same time.
I have a couple questions. So last meeting, I had asked if you guys could reach out to PFM to find out about borrowing the $6.5 million at that time for athletics separate from this borrow. Christy, did you get an answer on that?
I would prefer that they present that information to you, but just on a high level, they did not recommend borrowing on a short-term basis. They said, based on our projects, and we're not going to borrow everything right away. It's going to take a few years for us to borrow all these projects out, that to do it as a long-term borrow, and then if we would get funding in from, say, a grant writer, executive director, we could pay off that long-term borrow early.
Okay.
So to answer the question, they're not currently recommended, but we would want them to say that directly and give the reasons as to why.
Okay. And my other question is, why such a drastic change when options 1 through 4 were presented to us? It was based on a $36.8 million borrow. So why are we going from feeling comfortable with $36.8 million with those 4 recommendations or ideas, and now down to a 30.1? So if we borrowed to the 36.8, I have a really, really hard time not solving the problem with our elementary schools and focusing on, the athletics being a part of that, but our elementary is more of a long-term, well, we might do it in a couple years.
So
I might not be here, you may not be here, we all might not be here, who knows if we'll be here. When we have a university partner that could help us with a more temporary solution, I would much rather save money for a rainy day for athletics than save money for a rainy day for my elementary schools. That's just my thought.
So to be clear, we would be borrowing most of that $36.8 million, eventually. So the PFM added, when we talked with them, added another column for us. But we get to that number, the borrow number is roughly the same. We're just allocating district resources that we already have to cover the difference in the costs.
It just, to me, it doesn't feel like we're committed to it if it's not a part of the actual plan per se. It's more like we're kind of doing some, maneuvering around actually solving the problem for a 20-year solution.
So I think that that piece is true. We weren't doing all this construction at one time anyway. You know, we were going to phase it out. You know, by nature, it was going to be phased out anyway.
How many students are we talking about in pre-K?
Ooh, 3 classrooms, so
So
60.
roughly 60, yeah.
Yeah, I would say 60 kids.
That's both schools.
Yeah, there's 1 classroom at Nancy Grayson and 2 classrooms at James Byrd.
For pre-K?
Yes.
It's 2 at Nancy Grace and 1 at James.
I think it's backward. Yeah. So,
Sorry. Thank you.
The athletic part. Why can't we get it done? Why does it have to be tied to the rest of the stuff? I mean, why we done talked about it and beat it to death and everything, and we haven't accomplished anything, but we're losing money.
so I think, you know, with all these plans, that core package does address the athletics. You know, we're simply not able to do everything we want to do simultaneously. There's too many needs across the program. All of those options, if we do the core package, get us started at the high school, address our track, give us a turf, and allows us to have a lot of our events at that field. Basically everything but varsity football could play there.
I agree with that, but can we use the one? We've got 1.7. What is that fund, Christy? What the one?
1.77.
Yeah, what do they call it? Ship Proud. Can we use that to start the project?
So,
Let's get something done, something started. I've been here
so
4 years,
that's
I
what we're
haven't
trying to do,
accomplished
Mr. Scott, is pick a way forward, and then, you know, we need to do the resolutions to engage with PFM, to engage with the contractors. I just need to know which solution board members favor so that we can move it forward.
My other question is, do we know that we're making the right decisions with athletics when we haven't got the feasibility study back? You said it's not coming back until May, but we paid $45,000 for it.
So I believe so. I mean, because we know we need a track. So our track has 2 years tops, and that's with us playing 2 events at it. We currently have 170 kids who went out for track, which is a phenomenal number. You know, in 2 years, they're not going to have a place to be able to safely run track. To your question, we know we already have that field that we're using inside the track. All we're doing is upgrading it and allowing it to be used, you know, for marching band, to be used during the day for PA or PE. And you know, it's a pretty skinny athletic approach that allows us to get things on our campus, but isn't the $9.9 million stadium that we were hoping to build.
When it came to like where they were putting, we know that we need a track, but there was also a question of moving it, which was an additional expense. And like, so we know we need it, but like to actually break ground, we do need to wait for that feasibility study to know as far as like placements of the different.
Sure, and I think we certainly can, you know, in order to move the process forward, we want to get the financing in place that allows us to do that. If we need to adjust based on K&W's report, we can. In my meeting with K&W this last week, I believe and hopefully my recollection is that the macadam under the track is from the 1980s and is not viable anymore.
Why? I'm confused. What feasibility study? I thought we just got one. We're working off one feasibility.
So we have a usage study coming from K&W about what our facility, it's going to tell us what we need to support our current program. Okay. So it may need, I don't know what it's going to say. The turf field is really just replacing a field that we currently have available.
So I'm sorry, it's time for me to jump in and play time sheriff since we're past 8 o'clock. We do have opportunities for everybody to make comments at the end of your meeting, so I would encourage you all to kind of digest what you've heard over the next 45 minutes or so, and when it comes time to have board comments at the end of the meeting, please do offer your thoughts to administration on what you've heard tonight and let Mr. August know sort of where you are in your head, if you're feeling good about option 5, if you feel like there still needs to be revisions, if there's significant concerns that you have that you don't feel are being addressed. Those are the things that he needs to know before he can bring a fully fleshed proposal to the discussion agenda. All right, so with that, we are going to adjourn our meeting of Committee of the Whole, and we are going to start, as soon as I bang the gavel, the main event. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, I'd like to call our Planning and Action meeting, the Planning and Action meeting of the Shippensburg Area School District to order. Could I ask for a roll call?
Mr. Jim Bard.
Here.
Mr. Mark Buterball. Mr. Levi Kressler.
Here.
Dr. Michael Lyman.
Here.
Mr. Fred Scott.
Here.
Mr. Charlie Suiters.
Here.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger.
Here.
Mrs. Steph Aberly.
Here.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Here.
Mr. Aryan Gaunkar.
Here.
Miss Lily Kell.
Here.
All right, if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I'm taking them.
All right, I just want to note that we had an executive session at 6:30 prior to this meeting to discuss property and some contractual / personnel issues. As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children of this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. This meeting is being live streamed and uploaded to the district's YouTube channel. May we now have a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, and actions in behalf of the students of Shippensburg Area School District, and to honor Helen Dever, who was a graduate and a food service employee of the district for over 20 years. All right, so before we have our agenda approval, I just want to make a brief announcement. This shows up in the agenda later on as item 5H. But as Mr. Mark Buterball is not here today, I want to announce that he has formally submitted his resignation from the school board, and he did that today. I'd like to thank Mr. Buterball for his years and years of service to this community and to this board as a member of the board and, of course, as a long-term president of the school board. By now, probably many of you are familiar with the drill of appointing replacements to the board, but there is a law that we need to, an ordinance, whatever, that we need to name a replacement within 30 days of resignation. So that gives us kind of a tight window to get that done, because if we wait 2 board meetings, then we might be a little bit beyond that 30 days. So in the next few days, an announcement will be posted to the district website inviting letters of interest from community members who are in District B, thank you, which is all of the school district that resides in Franklin County. So if you live in the school district and in Franklin County and have interest in this position, instructions will be on the website, but we essentially will ask you to submit a letter of interest. You'll have about 11 or 12 days from now. I think it'll probably be Friday will be the deadline, not this coming Friday, but the following Friday will be the deadline most likely to submit those letters of interest. And then if you do submit a letter of interest, we'll invite you to this board meeting 2 weeks from today to introduce yourself and to offer some thoughts on why you would like to serve on the board. And then the board will vote on a replacement for that position. If there are any questions, please contact administration after the meeting or tomorrow or whatever, and we'll help you understand that process. All right, so there are several amendments to the agenda, unfortunately. Mr. August, do you want to go through these changes to the agenda?
Sure. Mr. Bitterball's vacancy added to tonight's agenda. Several items moved to discussion. 6F, Curriculum Associates quote, is a updated sales quote to the attachment. 6K, moved from action agenda item 5C to discussion agenda item 6K. Custodial services, auxiliary supplementary services to support cleaning the buildings when we're short-staffed. And then 5C, senior high school gym floor, moved to 6L. It's the estimate to fix the gym floor that was mistakenly put under action.
All right, with those amendments to the board agenda, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mrs. Eberly. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wolfinger. Roll call.
Mr. Jim Bard.
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler.
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman.
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters.
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger.
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Aberly.
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, thank you. So in our board meetings, we have two citizen comment periods. This first citizen comment period, the first citizen comment period is for agenda items. And it appears that one person has asked to comment, and we also invite others who have not indicated if they want to comment on an agenda item. When you come before the board, if you'd please identify yourself by name, indicate whether you are a district resident, and address all comments to the board as a whole, and make sure they are in the form of a statement. Questions will be taken under advisement. Responses to questions will be offered after due deliberation will be provided by the superintendent at the direction of the board within a few days of the board meeting. You'll be allowed 3 minutes for your comments. Comments relative to private student matters or personnel issues should be directed to the appropriate school authority outside of this meeting. The presiding officer resides the right to interrupt, terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. So, Darren Donovan, would you like to? Yep, it sure is. Sorry, I can't read the sheet. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to comment on any agenda items? All right, we look forward to your comments later on, Darren. Okay, student reports. Ms. Kell and Mr. Gunkar.
For the high school today club pictures took place in the gym, and seniors are being asked to sing at the graduation. Next week, the Evening of Jazz is taking place on the 23rd of this month. The annual Artrageous event took place last week at the high school, where students' artwork was displayed for schools district-wide. It was a great success with a coffee house show afterward. Student Council is currently having an R&K Subs fundraiser. And I'll pass the rest on to Mrs. Kell. Ms. Kell.
The middle school happenings. The 8th grade students are traveling to Harrisburg on March 14th to experience the Anne Frank play at Scottish Rite Theatre in Harrisburg. The Student Council-sponsored Penny Wars will take place from March 20th to March 31st. Teams will compete against each other to raise money for local charities. 10 students received 10 gift cards for getting caught being kind by their peers. This was sponsored by Shippensburg Resource Coalition. The ABA/ILS and LSS classes are continuing to host coffee shops. Staffs are available to purchase coffee shop style foods and have them delivered to their location. They have most recently added breakfast sandwiches to the menu. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your reports. All right, we have Franklin County Career Center report. We don't have a, okay, great. All right, I think we have a few board committee reports. I don't have a list of who met, but I believe that athletics and facilities met. Is that correct?
Facilities we reported last time. I do have an update for outreach though.
All right, I'm sorry that I'm off. Mrs. Wolfinger, if you'd like to give us an update on the outreach.
Just real quick. So Friday, we were able to conduct the first round of interviews for the executive director position, along with the Greyhound Foundation. Steph and myself and Nicole Weber, Josh Deal, and Monica Balafuentes. I'm going to butcher her name. I apologize, Monica. We all met on Friday. I am very, very pleased. We had amazing applicants. The 4 that we interviewed were stellar. So I just want to thank all of the applicants, and I feel encouraged to know that the interviewees, out of those, we had an amazing pool of candidates, and I feel confident that we will have an executive director soon that will help push the foundation and the district forward for the betterment of all of our students.
Thank you very much. All right, any other committee reports? All right, Mr. August.
Sure. Donation report. We'd like to acknowledge the following donations. So miscellaneous at the senior high musical. There were collections taken at the door. $1,200 was brought in, and that will be used to continue the work of the senior high drama club. The PA Foundation Future Farmers of America, $1,000 monetary donation to purchase a laser engraving machine to be used by our FFA. Again, that's a $1,000 donation. Carl L. Kramer Insurance, LLC, $250 to support special education track and field meet to be held at Shippensburg Area High School. And Folsinger Bricker Funeral Home and Crematorium Incorporated, $150 donation to support the special education track and field meet to be held at the high school. So thank you to all those folks who are so generous and continue to support our programs.
Mrs. Woodall, I believe I skipped over the curriculum report. I apologize.
That's okay. For my report this evening, I just wanted to bring up something. I think this actually probably should have went into the committee of the whole, but I knew that time was going to be, pretty much taken up. So next board agenda, I'm going to have a discussion item on there for a staggered start for kindergarten students. It's something the kindergarten teachers have been asking for. By the staggered start, what it means is on Thursday, August 24th, half the kindergarten students would come to school. So let's say A through M would come to school on Thursday, August 24th, and the teachers would be able to work with that small group in their classrooms to be able to get them enrolled in procedures and things like that going on in the classroom. It's much easier to work with 11 students and coming into school for the first time than 22 students coming into school for the first time. Then on Friday, August 25th, N through Z, roughly, we don't know all of our enrollment numbers yet, but roughly N through Z would come in on August 25th. And then on Monday, the 28th, all the students would come in. So that staggered start would really just give the kindergarten teachers just one day to focus on half their class each time before they all get together as a whole. It's something the kindergarten teachers really have been asking for and think that it would be a great benefit and a great value for them to build those relationships with their students and to get them used to the procedures of being in school for the first time. The downfall, just so you guys are aware, that could be an inconvenience for parents. The nice thing is our district's calendar, we don't start school until Thursday, so generally if you have daycare, you pay by the week. So if those families probably would have paid for the full week of daycare anyways, but I just wanted to be completely transparent and let you guys know that though there is the benefit of having the kindergarten teachers being able to meet with those small groups initially, there could be a downfall from some parents in the community where it is, an inconvenience to find that daycare or childcare that extra day that they're not in school. There are districts that do this. So Mechanicsburg actually does it K-3, which that's a lot. Kindergarten, I can totally understand, but talking to even some of our teachers today at our department head meeting, they were like, we'd really like to get going right away. Big Spring does a semi-staggered start where they all come in for the first couple days, but then kindergarten has off a day to go through and do some assessments. And then also Carlisle does it for 4 days of staggered kindergarten starts. This is not something that would need to go through the calendar, but I would like board approval for it to go through. So like I said, I'll be bringing it up for discussion at the next board meeting.
Having been an elementary principal, the first days of kindergarten are rough for everyone, and we want that experience to be as positive as possible. There's a lot of moving parts in that first week with kids, and I think it's really kind of a great direction to go to. And as Sherry said, it's not uncommon to have a soft start for kindergarten.
So did you say it's one day for one half and another day for the other half, and then everybody comes? So it would be Thursday for one half, Friday the other half, and then Monday everybody comes?
Correct.
Okay.
Give the teachers some time for that staggered to build a relationship, but not inconvenience families into another week.
My daughter taught first grade, and she said kindergarten teachers are the best things in the world.
I don't know how they do it.
They are the Green Berets of elementary education.
All right. Enrollment report?
Yes, sir. Current district enrollment at the elementary level is 1,082. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. The secondary school enrollment total senior high is 1,150. Middle school is 785. And at SACE, we were at 553. Our grand total is 3,595 students, which hasn't fluctuated much since my last update. However, just reiterating, we have 173 more students now in March than we did last year. And that's my enrollment report.
All right.
Before you move on, just a couple more things. I just want to, while I have time, talk a little bit about the profile of a grad thought exchange that was put out. Just encourage staff, students, community members, board members to participate in that. So far, we've had great participation, and it is really interesting to see the ideas form around our profile. And I just want to reiterate how awesome Artrageous and the Coffee House was. And kudos to our art department and all the folks that put that together, and Mr. Martin for making that happen. That's a great event. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, item 4, our consent agenda. Item 4A is approval of the minutes from our last board meeting. Item 4B, finance report. Item 4C, the Rosetta Stone license. Administration requesting approval of the following agreement for Rosetta Stone from August 2023 to June 2025. Item 4D, revised job description for our traffic monitor. Item 4E is the Schoology learning management system. Administration's recommending the renewal of the 1-year agreement with PowerSchool for their Schoology learning management system. And you can see the cost listed there. Item 4F is invitation to bid for middle school equipment, student and teacher desks, chairs, to fill the new classrooms that we are building, as well as cafeteria tables. Item 4G is approval to apply and accept a bid with PrismWorks Technology. This is a bid to replace our wireless system that will no longer be managed through the IU, thank you. And then finally, 4H is a senior class trip. Administration recommends the approval of the class senior trip to Washington, D.C. and Bowie, Maryland on Tuesday, May 30th. Are there any items here that anyone would like to take separately?
The traffic, for me, the traffic.
Would like to take the traffic items separately?
I'd like to know-
Traffic position?
Yeah, I'd like to, what's that about?
So that is item 4D. All right, then, do we have a motion to approve items 4A through C and items 4E through 4H?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Lyman. Is there a second?
Fred Scott, second.
Mr. Scott, second. Roll call?
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, is there a motion to approve item 4D?
Motion approved.
Motion made by Mrs. Wolfinger,
Seconds, Fred.
second by Mr. Scott. Discussion?
What is it? I mean, is that the hall
So,
monitors?
no, sir, so our traffic monitor, the gentleman that directs traffic, for our buses and families dropping off students, he's kind of in limbo. He doesn't belong, he's not currently in the support staff association. He has not received a raise in the last 5 years. So this is bringing him into that agreement so that he can get scheduled raises. Those gentlemen and ladies are difficult to find. And so, this is really just kind of moving him in so that he can be taken care of like the rest of our support staff and critical position.
But I brought my grandson to school this morning, which I hate. But anyway, there was a bunch of people out there directing traffic. Are we talking about one person or all of them?
So we only have 2, correct?
I'm not sure how many we have.
So we have 2 to my knowledge. This would be bringing them in to the association. The other side of this is when those gentlemen cannot come or you need to take a day off, we're using our own staff to do that. So that's kind of like not a good look that we're replacing them with association people to do this job. So it's just another reason why this group of people needs to be in our association.
Okay.
I think if my memory serves, Dr. Moyer and Mr. Barnes were doing a lot of traffic stuff earlier this year, correct?
Mr. Barnes for sure, and I believe Dr. Moyer were both directing traffic, which is, no shot at their skills, but probably isn't the best use of their time.
All right, any further discussion? Roll call?
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, and then the final agenda item under, or final item under 4 is personnel. So there are various FMLA leave requests, leave of absence extensions, retirements, resignations, and new appointments. Is there a motion to approve item 4I?
Fred Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Suiters. Discussion?
So I just, a position on here that, of a retirement that's noteworthy, is Mrs. Dubs. She's been a staple of our district for 33 years. I know I walked through these halls, and she was there for me when I walked through these halls. She is still walking through these halls as my daughter's going through 9th grade, and she still has that same energy and passion in 33 years, and she's been consistent throughout her career. So I just want to say congratulations to her on a wonderful career and best wishes in her next phases in life, and it's definitely been a pleasure to know her and to work with her.
Absolutely, she's a tremendous loss.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, that brings us to our action agenda. Item 5A is a memorandum of agreement between the district and Shippensburg Area Educational Support Association. Administration recommends the approval of the memorandum of agreement between the district and the support association to include the traffic monitor position in the bargaining unit and placed in pay level 2. So what was in the consent agenda had to do with the change of the job description. Item 5A has to do with moving this job description into the memorandum of, or moving into the support association. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion to approve item 5A?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mrs. Wolfinger. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Item 5B is a memorandum of understanding between the district and Shippensburg Area Educational Association. Administration recommends the approval of the memorandum of understanding regarding teachers voluntarily agreeing to teach summer school classes or courses for a stipend. Additional information is in the attached MOU. Is there a motion to approve item 5B?
Move to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Bard. Is there a second?
Fred
Second.
Scott, second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, item 5C is on there erroneously. That's been moved to the discussion agenda. Item 5D, facility usage fees waived. At the August 8th, 2022 board meeting, it was approved to pause billing charges to outside organizations for use of district facilities after July 1, 2022, until the facility and policy committees could review and update policy 707, which has to do with the use of district facilities and the fee schedule to use those facilities. At the last board meeting, policy 707 was revised and approved, and the facilities fees schedule was updated. So administration recommends that the Board of School Directors waive any facility usage fees incurred by Group 2 from the period of July 1 through 2022 through June 30, 2023. Beginning in July 1, 2023, all groups will be invoiced utilizing the fees formula outlined in the revised Policy 707 and the updated facility fees schedule. Is there a motion to approve item 5D?
Fred Scott, make a motion to approve.
Mr. Scott makes a motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bard. Any discussion?
Do we have a rough estimate of what that savings is, Mr. August?
We don't at this point.
So is,
Go ahead.
were you done?
Sure.
So this is just, by group 2, that's that classification of organizations that fit in that particular category, right?
Correct.
And so we're essentially going retroactively saying
Exactly.
you can follow the policy that we approved a few meetings ago.
Correct. And there's a ton of calculations to that. The number is not huge. And it just basically resets the table to what the board's already agreed to. And just moves us forward with that new policy and new approach.
Is there something else you want to say? Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Item 5E is a contract with DJ Genergy Did I get that right this time? Administration recommends the approval of the contract with DJ Genergy for the Shippensburg Area Intermediate Schools PTO-sponsored family night on Friday, March 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. Cost of the entertainment will be paid by the Intermediate School PTO. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mrs. Wolfinger,
Second.
second by Mrs. Eberly. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, Item 5F is a revision to the 2023-2024 school calendar, which will move the spring holiday 1 week earlier to align with Easter. This was an oversight in making the first draft of the calendar, and being corrected now. The revised calendar is attached. Is there a motion to approve? Item 5F.
Move to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Bard,
Second.
second by Dr. Lyman. Any discussion? Roll call.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Item 5G is a field trip request. Administration requests approval to add Renfrew Museum and Park in Waynesboro as a field trip option for special education students. If approved, this trip will be taken on Thursday, April 20th, 2023, and the cost of $130 will be paid out of the special education budget. Is there a motion to approve item 5G?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mrs. Wolfinger,
Second.
second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. And item 5H is just the verbiage or the sort of reminder of Mr. Buderbau's resignation. This does not require any board action, but it is in the agenda, so it will be in the minutes. All right. Now we'll move on to the discussion agenda. Item 6A, Capital Area Intermediate Unit General Operating Budget for 23-24. Administration will recommend the approval of the 23-24 General Operating Budget for the Intermediate Unit. Copy of the proposed budget is attached along with the resolution. Their operating budget looks to be $7.5 million for the next year, which will be a 0.5% increase from last year's budget. Our share of the Intermediate Union's general operations is $33,000, remaining flat from the previous budget year. Any comments or questions on item 6A? Item 6B, Food Service Management Company renewal and meal prices for 23-24. So at the next board meeting, the board of directors, I'm sorry, that is not at the next board meeting. This is March 25th, 2019. The Board of School Directors awarded the rebid of the Food Service Management Company's proposals to Chartwells effective July 1, 2019. The contract allowed for up to 4 additional one-year renewals. The attached 23-24 contract renewal, which includes meal pricing, is the final renewal year available under the current contract. Administration will recommend the approval of that attached one-year renewal contract. Are there any questions?
Actually, I do. Is it possible to have a cost analysis versus what it would look like with Chartwells versus if we went in-house, along with some of those pros and cons?
So we can attempt to do that. I think that the general thinking, when we have it in-house, then we have to pay Peasers and other fees, and so that drives the price up, and it ends up being a bigger deficit item than when we outsource it to Chartwells. So those are part of that reasoning, but we can certainly look at previous, when we had, the last time we had it in-house. I'm not sure how we would do that, Mrs. Lenz.
I'm going to say that there probably wouldn't be time between this board meeting and the next board meeting to do that kind of thorough analysis. If this isn't approved by the next board meeting, we're going to have to go out for rebid. It's going to force us into rebid, which at that point probably is going to put the summer lunch program in jeopardy. But what I can tell you is we looked at this a couple years ago, and with having Chartwells as our food service management company, they can get competitive food pricing because they buy in bulk for a lot of school districts. So there's that savings that I don't know that I could necessarily analyze. What I can tell you is this was pre-me, but looking at the financials usually ran close to the negatives or in the negatives when we were in-house versus since Chartwells has been here, we've been operating usually at a profit status. And then again, just to reiterate, it's not like a financial savings, but a time savings with having Chartwells. If we would bring that back in-house, there'd have to be a lot of bidding. There's a lot of rules and regulations around procurement of food service, like the actual food that we're procuring. So that would be very timely for, I would say, a food service director to do. It's certainly something I can't take on. We would have to bring in our back in-house a food service director, and that's a lot on their plate.
Well, I know, again, it is 100% for profit, but when we're talking about the cost savings that they can order in bulk and the pricing being cheaper, we have our own clubs and organizations that refuse to use them because the price is so high. So, which again is like to see some kind of financial.
So I think there's two sides of it. There's the school lunch program, and then there's kind of the catering part. They're kind of two different animals. The real problem, it's not really necessarily a problem, is that school lunches don't cost, or we charge students less than it takes for us to produce that meal. So we often have to operate at a loss on each individual meal. There is some state reimbursement to that, but it's usually doesn't keep up with reality in most of my experience.
I don't want to hold up the summer lunch program, but we have one more year on this 4-year, 1-year contract.
So I definitely think something to look at as
Yes.
right.
Not now, but like to look at beyond this because it'll take time to gather those.
We can look at the numbers that we have available, for the upcoming renewal.
And Christy, just looking at the meal prices that are attached there, are those increases due to economical reasons?
Yes. Food prices have gone up substantially.
All right, item 6C has to do with the summer food service program. The food service department would like to continue offering summer feeding program for the 7th year. The program begins at the end of the school year and runs for approximately 11 weeks. Provides free meals to children 18 and under. Federal funds are received for this program and cover all of the direct costs. Still some details as to site and whatever to be worked out. But administration recommends the approval of this program. We'll see that on the next agenda. Are there any questions about the summer food service program?
So the federal funds cover just the food, or do they cover these personnel issues as
They
well?
cover the personnel.
They also cover the personnel. So it's free food for kids for the summer.
Correct.
And some jobs for some people who are willing to feed kids over the summer. I don't see any downsides.
Item 6D is a 2023 Technology Innovation Grant. Administration is recommending the approval for Corey Kaufman, 5th grade math and science teacher at the intermediate school, to apply for and accept funds through the Greater Chambersburg Chamber Foundation for the 2023 Technology Innovation Grant. If awarded, the funds will be used to purchase 4 3D printers and filament to be part of the 5th grade science standards that include the design process and advancing technologies. Students will be able to design items that can be given out during the PBIS program at the intermediate school. And there's additional information attached. Any questions about that grant opportunity?
Can I just ask a general question? Sorry. Is there some reason this needs board approval? Is it just, if someone applies for a grant over a certain level, does it have to get board approval?
Yeah,
Is that what's happening?
in order to accept grants, it does require board approval.
Well, good job, Mr. Kaufman.
Yeah, no kidding. Item 6E, Wright Elevator Service Agreement. Administration will recommend the approval of entering into a 5-year service agreement with Wright Elevator for the quarterly examination, lubrication, adjustments, and cleaning of the elevator located in the intermediate school. Any questions on that? Item 6F, Curriculum Associates quote. Administration seeking approval for the Curriculum Associates Memorandum of Understanding for grades 1 through 8I Ready Math for the 23-24 school year through the 28-29 school year. Grades 1 through 5 are currently utilizing Ready Math and are wanting to continue with the new 2024 version. Grades 6 through 8 Math would like to utilize this resource for continuity and rigor. Any questions on that? I guess there's more to this, but I don't know. There's Go Math resource, which has not been as rigorous, apparently. And item 6G, part-time classroom assistant position at James Byrd Elementary School. Administration recommends the addition of a part-time classroom assistant position at the James Byrd Elementary School. And there are additional details there. The annual cost of the part-time classroom assistant would be nearly $18,000.
So this is this kind of options that we have. This is a student that can function in our district with additional supports. If we were to remove them to an outside placement, you can see the cost there. It is the recommendation of the special ed department that the student get these additional supports, per their IEP, and our ability to deliver services to them.
It's a beautiful thing.
Item 6H, dual enrollment grant. Administration seeking approval to apply for and accept the competitive dual enrollment grant, $75,000, which will pay for one dual enrollment course for interested students for the 23-24 school year, with particular focus on expanding the opportunity to students with low socioeconomic status. The grant will also include transportation for the one-credit course scheduled at Shippensburg University. Any questions on that? Item 6I is the district camera project. Administration recommends approving Siemens to install cameras, network video recorders, and associate cabling in school buildings and district office. This has been something that's been on the agenda, seems like quite a bit. We've talked about this. Is there, Mr. August, do you have a?
Sure. So we're looking to get some additional bids to see what that cost might be. So we may return to this with a different vendor if that number's down, but Siemens is the one that we've been primarily using. These costs are offset by some grant money that we've had, the PCCD grants, and some other funds that have been set aside by the district to pay for these cameras. It is just another step forward in student safety and security in the buildings. When things go down, it is awfully nice to have a camera to be able to look at to figure out what happened. And so just an increase across the board to your point, that the district has been, I would describe as itching to get done, and this is us moving forward with it.
Is this all buildings or just particular buildings?
All levels.
The whole school district will have cameras?
Yes.
Okay.
What was the amount for the grant money that was set aside for it?
So we have the $50,000 of the competitive grant that I received. And then I believe, I'm trying to think, I believe it's $152.
Right.
So for the PCCD.
And then wasn't there a motion by Mr. Burt to match that amount? So in the current budget year?
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So long time coming, getting it off the ground. And I'm excited to to have that upgrade.
Item 6J has to do with property acquisition. There's the possibility of acquisition of a property on Route 11 to be used for administrative offices, which will free up a considerable amount of space in the high school, as well as give the district a new face. Are there any questions regarding 6J? Item 6K has to do with custodial services. So administration is recommending entering into an agreement with Ames Janitorial Services on an as-needed basis to help the district with custodial help. There's no charge to the district if we do not use their services. I think it's my understanding that this is not something that we want to do, but on occasion when our custodians are out or there are too many out and it is difficult to find substitutes, there needs to be some sort of emergency backup system.
Correct. This is a breaking case of emergency, when we have, night custodians out. And we'd like to use it sparingly because it is the most expensive option, but there are times when, we simply need to be able to get classrooms cleaned. And so, we're taking other measures to try to supplement our custodial staff and get substitutes, but this gives us some leeway.
Are they required, if we ask for them, are they required to show up? Will they be required?
So I mean, they have their availability issues as well.
Okay.
So we typically don't get a lot of notice if someone's calling in sick, but we would try to turn it around. And my understanding is that they tend to have 2 to 4 people available on any given night that might be able to help us.
And they'll have the background checked and everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what we would do with an outside agency to be able to come in.
Where's this company out of?
Was it York? Was it York? Mm-hmm. York. That's
Yeah, I believe York.
Did we check with any local companies, or we just?
We did. Mrs. Weber, tried to get as many different options as she could.
They're coming from all the way York here to clean our building?
Well, I think that's maybe where they're based.
Okay. I was going to say, they ain't make no profit there.
All right, and then our
Dr. Goetz, if I can interrupt you, can we go back to 6J really quick? Sure. Christy, can you talk a little bit about where the funding for, if we were to move forward with that would come from?
Sure. So we currently have money set aside in our fund balance for capital projects. So that is the line item that we would recommend that money could come out of.
Thank you.
But this item, which will be on the action agenda next meeting, is just to further the process along. It is not a final approval of a certain dollar amount that we will spend yet.
Correct.
All right, the final item, I believe, on the discussion agenda is, which you don't see, you'll see as 5C on the agenda, which has to do with the senior high school gym floors. Administration will recommend the approval to have the senior high school gym floor palm sanded, repainted in current color, and add a new base coating to repair playing surface until the new gymnasium project is started. This will give the district a safe playing court for 2 to 3 years. The estimated cost of the project is $6,500. So is it my understanding that this is a stopgap until we do a potential more expansive revision of the high school?
Correct. I would say more than a stopgap. Like we had the problem with the peeling, of the paint. This, rather than taking the whole surface down and redoing all the lines, which is fairly expensive, into the 30,000s. This gets the problem areas taken care of, and it basically makes it playable. The reason why we just don't do the whole gym now is that, if we move forward with a gym project, we would be shifting the court over, and then we would have, so we would be putting lines down now, and if that project comes to fruition, we would move it over. Moving the gym over would require us to take all those things up and pay a significant price again. The contractor that we spoke with, advised us if that is our plan to not spend the money twice. He assured us that this would fix our problem, and not allow us to spend double the money to fix it down the road.
What have the years past, the 25 years we've had that court, what's that $6,000 going to be any different than what we've been paying before?
So this is them coming in. So this is the mini version of what they were going to do to the entire gym. So they're going to look at the problem spots and sand them down and repaint them and leave the lines, which are still good, in place, and basically get it to be court ready and playable, without,
What I'm trying to find, what is the difference? We sanded get the floor ready before when we having problems. This is not the first time we've had problems.
So I think we haven't done it. We haven't done it professionally, to my knowledge.
You sure?
I believe it was the floor, wasn't it like polyurethane or something? It was
Sure. So we've sealed it
down.
My understanding, Mr. Scott, is whatever we've done over the years, there's now a chemical bond problem. So as we continue to we've not taken the gym floor down as they've recommended.
Yes.
So this is a version of that, but in the troubled areas, so that we can get it playable. So this is not what we've been doing in the past to get the court painted. So over time, we've just continued to repaint over top of that, and we've not taken the gym floor down. So you have to take it down to the bare wood, which removes.
That's a $33,000.
Right. So if we do that now,
okay,
we would be repainting the lines as they are, with the gym configured as it is.
Yes.
If and when we move forward with the high school construction project, that plan is, in order to get more seating, is to shift the court over. So we would be painting or putting lines down and painting, the key and the I forget the paint.
Yeah, just painted.
Yeah. So we would have to then sand that all off again and move everything over, which would be a significant cost. So this gets us through for another 2 or 3 years, which hopefully by then we've moved forward on the gym project, so that we're not going to pay twice to take it down and reline the court.
The if and the when and the hope is what my concern. I've been on this board 3 years, and the wish and the hope and everything is still down the road. So, I mean, we have that floor being criticized by other schools, and our own kids being.
So this fixes that.
So money's more important than our kids getting a decent and a respectable court to play on. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that this fix gets us to a comparable gym floor for our kids to be able to play on and to not look bad. What it does is saves us from doing it twice when we redo the gym. So we're not going to be we're not going to. This process is taking all the lines off. If we do the $33,000 option, we're taking the entire gym down, taking all the lines off, and then repainting them where they are.
Okay.
Which means, and you heard the projects that we want to move on for. We will move forward with those projects in some form. If we do the whole gym now, we will have to do that again at the same cost. So this is a savings, but it doesn't put our kids at any kind of competitive disadvantage, or it doesn't look bad. The gentleman assured me that they're going to make it competition ready. My directive to him was it's got to look decent, and he's assured me that it's going to look like a regular high school gym, but we're going to save money when we get this project off the ground, which is still, even if we get the finance approved, it's going to take a year or two for the project to be done. So it doesn't make sense to my mind. I'm recommending that we don't spend that money twice.
Well, my mind is the $6,000 is the same I want to know, is that the same process we've been doing for the last 20 years?
No, it is not, sir.
You can say that with a certainty?
Yes.
Okay.
Just one comment, and Mr. August, this is going to date back to prior to your arrival here. But when you said about the contractor assured us this will give us a quality, competitive, all that will be good for 2 years.
When it comes to the lines and the paint.
So what I would say is, I myself can tell you, I was sold that same bill of goods for our track when we spent $42,000, and we still have potholes. So I understand what you're saying, and I'm taking your word for it, but I also really struggle, and this just goes into the entire frustration that I have personally with a lot of other things, but we spent $42,000 on our track, and basically all we did was power wash it and put some new lines down. It didn't do anything to help with our holes that we still just said tonight, 2 years tops is what we can use it for, and that's with only using it 2 meets a year.
Sure.
So I know this is, even if we did the whole thing, it's less, and I understand your point as to why we wouldn't do that. To kind of go with what Mr. Scott said, I really struggled to get optimistic that we're going to be like, okay, in the summer of 2024, we're going to be ready to put a new gym floor down and do the whole thing, because we haven't got to that point anywhere close to it yet.
My question is, how's he gonna match that paint that's down there now? It's gonna look like a patch to me.
My understanding with my meeting with.
When we had our facilities meeting, I think that's why we said we would do it twice.
So if the board, this is why we have discussions. My recommendation is to save that money because we're gonna have to do it again. If the board is feeling strongly that we do want to do the whole gym and take it down, we certainly can. I mean, that is a, $25,000 difference that we may have to pay twice.
My question is this: does it create any safety issues with only hitting certain spots of that wood floor? Is it going to create any kind of like divots throughout the floor?
No, to my understanding,
The
no.
surface will be level the whole way across.
Right.
So, you're not
So this,
sanding it all
right.
the way across.
I mean, they know what they're doing. They're going to get it. They're going to get it competition ready. As it stands now, we would not be able to. We could be challenged if we play at a playoff game in our gym by another team. This is going to fix that, and they're taking all. They're taking both of the paint areas and getting them down. I think our lines are black, so I think they're just going to fill it in with maroon.
So our painted area is the only area that's a concern.
Where the paint's coming up is where they're going to fix. So what we've been doing is painting over other paint. So just like in your house when you paint over paint and you don't put a primer down, it comes off. Yeah. We're fixing that by getting a good sanding of it and taking those sections down and repainting them to look good.
Who is the company doing it? It's not listed.
I'm not sure. Sorry, the name escapes me right now.
They're just doing the paint area.
Right.
So if we spend the $6,000 or whatever, $6,500 to do that, what's to say outside the paint area it's not going to start doing it?
Because it's not paint. So the major problem is the paint is coming up. So the only other the place where there is paint is just, for lack of a better word, inside the paint.
Did you talk to Sarah about that? Because she told me there was other spots outside the paint that was doing that.
I'm not aware of those, but I can.
That's what she told me. I don't know either.
I mean, we're going to take care of it. We're going to take care of all the areas that need taken care of through this process.
But I don't want it a reason to save money at the kids' expense and the school district expense. I mean, no, like I said, if I was guaranteed in 2 years that high school gymnasium is going to be remodeled or built, hey, go for it. But I'm not comfortable with that assumption.
Well, I think, Mr. Scott, that speaks to the urgency of making a decision on the other stuff. So, there is some contingencies here. I get that. Just so you're aware, my thinking is that we're going to pick an option. We're going to move forward on it, and then that includes, upgrades to the gym. So much of our time has been talking about those options and selecting one to move forward on. As soon as I get a little more direction from the board on which option, the majority feel comfortable with, my plan is to move forward with it. I think I've been fairly clear on that, that we have to move forward on these facility projects. So I believe at the end of the meeting, we're going to have some additional comments from board members to give me that direction so we can move forward. So I hear what you're saying. In my mind, I'm thinking we're picking a project, we're picking a way forward. That's why we don't want to do the double sand down, larger double cost to fix the gym because we're going to be addressing the gym, as soon as we pick a way forward.
I don't know if it helps you any, but I'm more optimistic now than I ever have been that we have a way forward. And I'm feeling good about it. Like we're getting close to a broad vision, I think, of what we want to do. And then it's just going to be how we're going to divide up that vision into, manageable chunks. Because we can't borrow all the money at once. We borrow it in chunks. And I've said before that I think Bill said this as well. Like in my mind, athletics has to be in that first chunk. I think Mr. August has said that the high school and athletics in the first chunk as well is what he's recommending. So I'm feeling good about it. I think we're getting closer to a consensus about what we need to do than we ever have been. All right, well, that brings us to citizens' comments regarding non-agenda items. Same rules apply. So, Mr. Donovan, glad you stuck around with us.
Good evening, Darren Donovan. I am a resident of Shippensburg Township. I want to speak on a couple different items here. The cyber school payout of roughly $2.5 million. It's no secret that the majority of the students left public school when public school education system. It's no secret that the majority of those students left public school when the public education system burnt the trust of many parents during COVID restrictions. And I'm willing to bet that more parents would be transferring their kids to private school if it was more affordable. So what can we do to make the in-person public education experience better? I think things like the club day for the middle school is a great idea. It's a great start, and I definitely fully support that. Providing functional athletic facilities will be another great start. And do we have any goals in place to bring back a certain percentage of the kids that we lost? Like each year, we should set goals and try to meet those goals. If you don't have a goal, you're shooting for nothing. If we can cut those numbers even in half, that's a large amount of funds that this district could be using to make improvements for different things that are needed. I believe the public school system is going to have to prove to the community that they are committed to going above and beyond to provide opportunity for success to all students, provide a safe and secure place to learn, and 3, stick to a solid educational foundation. Another thing I want to talk about was the health benefits cost going up roughly $700,000. Does anybody know if the teachers and staff are happy with the insurance options that they currently have? And another question would be, when was the last time the district shopped around for better prices and insurance options? Third thing, be the last thing, about the borrowing process we're about to go through. Seems like we're already operating at a less than attractive savings fund, and there were some comments made. They seem kind of reckless to me. I don't see how we can continue to try to borrow our way out of debt. That's never going to work. Are there any plans in place to increase our district's emergency fund? And depending on how things move forward, if we get in a pinch over the next 10 years throughout this building process and expansion, I remember when I was a middle schooler attending a neighboring district, they brought in portable classrooms to get by during renovations for a few years until everything kind of fell into place. Didn't know if that would be an option for here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Is there any other comments from the public? Dr. Moyer.
Thank you. I think I'm breaking the rules here a little bit. This is about an agenda item. With the blessing of Superintendent August, I had the pleasure of meeting with representatives of the 7 different groups that use our facilities on a regular basis, youth basketball, youth wrestling, swimming, Boys and Girls Club, etc. Just wanted to share how appreciative they were of the revisions that we've made to Policy 707, and also tonight with your approval of waiving their fees for this past year. If pending your approval, they wanted me to express their gratitude to all of you and how much they appreciate your support of the programs. And truly, almost all of these Group 2 programs are programs that are feeder programs for our middle school and high school programs. So I think it was fully appropriate, and I commend you for your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moyer. Always welcome to comment. Any other comments? All right. It's now time for board comments. I almost skipped over you guys to the information date saver. So again, with whatever other comments, I mean, remember that part of the purpose of the committee of the whole is for us to have conversation to help guide, administration in what recommendations should be brought forward. It's, in the past been kind of messy when recommendations have been brought forward in discussion, and it just hasn't worked for the board, and so here's Mr. August is giving us rough drafts, right? So we had an early rough draft of facilities. Now we have a more revised rough draft, and we want to get it right. So please provide feedback, and sort of talk about what you can support and what you can't support, to help direct Mr. August in what the next step should be. If we need another rough draft, or if we're ready for something to come on the discussion agenda. So I'm not sure which side I should start on this time. I feel like we should do something a little different. Mr. Bard, would you mind starting?
Nope. Well, first of all, I got one question to start out. I thought whenever we had these discussions as a board of the whole, we were just going to reassume them if we didn't finish, which we didn't finish in there. So we're going to do this now.
Well, I don't want it to be. I don't want this to be a back and forth bit. This is regular board comments. You can make your board comments about whatever, but please, if you have feedback for Mr. August in regards to the presentation during the committee of the whole, please provide that as well.
So I think, I don't want to, it's not supposed to be back and forth. However, I thought that the committee of the whole, to get the feedback for Bill to know, where are we at as a whole, so that the community can see the kind of temperature that the board is leaning to help, so that if he brings back a different recommendation or the same, that was.
I agree, and I don't want to.
So what I would say to that to everyone is, the committee of the whole was intended to do that. As we switch to this new format, sometimes it's tough to predict what the timing is. In other districts, that the committee goes until the work is done, and then we start the regular board meeting. We're able to start the board meeting late. We're just not allowed to start regular board meetings early. So I hear that, and that may be something we need to adjust moving on. However, to make do with starting at 8 and not having the full time there for the committee of the whole, we can at least get some continued discussion here. I'm just really kind of looking for feedback on option 5. Is that something that you're interested in? Is there another option of the ones that have been presented that you like? So I can either move forward or go back to the drawing board.
God. Is Jim speaking, or you asking?
All right. So anyhow, actually, I haven't really looked at it, and that's partially my fault for not getting the agenda opened up at my house, or for the board of whole. So I really don't have a comment on which direction to go on that until I look at that a little bit more on what I have.
Okay. Thanks.
So I'll have a couple things. One, let me get this out of the way. I think we had 2 kids that competed at the state wrestling tournament this past weekend. Diesel Kozer, and then also Dominic Frontino. Dominic finished 4th in the state, I think 160 pounds. I also believe that was his second state medal. So kudos to him, kudos to all the coaches and the entire wrestling program. There's a strong history of successful kids and teams there. Just one quick word about Mark and his resignation. When I decided I was going to do this, Mark was the first person who reached out to me offering help or anything at all. And then once I got on the board as well as the president, we had plenty of phone conversations about anything at all that was coming up. So I just have to say how much I appreciate that. Mr. Hilbinger also, almost a year ago, I guess, resigned. Mark, kind of the same way. Guys who have served a long time on the board who served as tremendous mentors. Now, this next part, Mr. Bard brought it up.
Levi, could you do me a favor and just talk a little bit closer to the microphone?
Absolutely. Mr. Bard brought it up about the timing, about these meetings and whatnot. And, we tonight, in all honesty, I sit here and I say, with all due respect, Mr. August, we saw, most of us saw everything that you presented tonight last week, I believe, in email. So there was nothing new, and the community saw it tonight. However, I sit here and think that we barely had any time to really talk, dialogue, debate. And really, to me, with no offense to Christy and her tremendous budget update, and obviously the clubs and the kids who came, I feel like I just wasted an hour of my life tonight because we didn't get any closer to making any sort of decisions or even debating back and forth or the dialogue that we really need to have. So then I was sitting here tonight, and I have this old notebook that I've had since I got on the board. And on June 8th of 2021, I had notes wrote down here in my board comment that said, so what I'm asking for is for us to meet bi-weekly starting after the June 15th Site Logic Facilities meeting so we could talk, dialogue, discuss these projects with the intention that we could come to a decision this fall as the students come back to school. Now we are in March of 2023. I don't know, that's 9 months ago, 8 months ago, whatever it is. We really aren't any closer. I'd like to, we can say we're optimistic, but till you tell me that there is a vote on the table that we can just put our chips in and say, we're ready to vote, I don't know that we can, because it's always back and forth, and we all have our own little pieces of the pie that we selfishly want, but until we have true time to sit and talk, that what I want may not be with what Ms. Wolfinger wants, but we can have a dialogue and come to an agreement outside of 20 minutes in this new format, then I don't think we're getting anywhere. I'm not optimistic about where we're at. And we have to make decisions because I also wrote in last year on June 8th that at that point we had lost $5 million due to the inflation or whatever. Well, now that number, I believe, of course, has gone up. And we could have voted and been ready to take out the next allotment of chunk of money January 1st. We aren't there. We aren't there with, really, the middle school project's great. I'm super excited about it. It's awesome. I've said it 3 times. It's awesome to walk, to drive by and see work being done, but the ball has now slowed in my mind. And it's my own personal belief. I hope that we can come to some sort of agreement to just sit. Time is money for all of us. We all have lives. But I also know that I made a commitment to do whatever I could to move forward with what is the biggest job as a school board member at this point, which is our facilities. I think the biggest thing that I had was hiring Mr. August and going through that search, and that was very time consuming. But I enjoyed that. And now I look and I think the biggest thing that I have to do, or that any of us have to do, is what we are doing with our facility projects. And I think we got to get moving. So that's really about it. I appreciated some of your options on the first go-round, and I also am willing to get behind this stuff here as well, the 5, not 2.1, option 5.
Gotcha.
So if you need to know where I'm at, that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Mr. Chris, just to kind of circle back to that, we have to have these conversations in public.
Mm-hmm.
I try to preface those, the information to board members ahead of time and try to get as many questions answered as possible, and to give you as much information as you may need. So the conversations have to happen in public. I'm happy to dedicate the entire committee of the whole next board meeting to just picking an option. To your point, I never want to have downtime for the board. I want every meeting to be run efficiently and to get as much information as possible. So hearing what Mr. Bard and several others have said, I mean, I think it makes sense to dedicate the entire March 27th board meeting committee of the whole to just the facilities discussion. And if there's, I'd like to avoid gaps between meetings as much as possible.
Just for the record, I am totally open to if you tell me like, hey, advertise that we're going to meet like next Thursday night or something like that. I haven't looked at my schedule, so please don't quote me on that. But whatever the date is, like send out an email, make sure we're all available, publicize it, and then just say, hey, we're going to sit for.
So the committee of the whole can absolutely function that way.
And I'm fine. Obviously, these conversations need to happen in public, and everybody needs to know where we stand on things. And does it create a little more burden on us? Absolutely, but I'm 100% willing to take on that burden.
Gotcha.
Mrs. Wolfinger.
So I absolutely agree with Levi. This evening we had 7 minutes left after all the presentations. There were 7 minutes. I looked at the clock with my nerdiness to see how long we had to just actually ask questions and discuss. And I think that there's probably more than myself that have questions. And I feel like, not being able to have that conversation now in a fluid way is not going to get us any closer to the decision that you need to hear from us. So whether that's adjusting the time for the committee of the whole to be 6:30 as opposed to 7 o'clock, whether we have a special meeting, I am available and open and ready to discuss so that we can get to a decision-making point amongst the board. I still am not completely sold that we have explored all of our options for athletics in our community. I know myself, with speaking with multiple people in the community, that there are partners in our community that want to help us, and I think that we owe it to our taxpayers to be good stewards of their money, and I think that we have not done our due diligence to work through those solutions in any meaningful way. I think when people don't want to make things work, then they're not going to work. And as far as facilities go, I think that we would all be in agreement that we're kind of all on the same page with the high school project. So I'm wondering if we can't, until we figure out the elementary schools and the athletics piece of it, can we not move forward with the high school, knowing that we pretty much have all decided those were the areas that we wanted to move forward with. So kind of like the middle school, the middle school, everybody had decided that they wanted to move forward with that. Can we not do the same thing with the high school to, again, move us forward and create momentum? That's all I have.
Well, I'm not on the high school. I don't understand the band and the theatrical part.
You get a little closer to the microphone.
The high school part, it's a necessity of the band room being expanded and the theatrical part being expanded. I'm not for sure, in my mind, that that's a top priority for the high school. But for me, I want to vote. I like people to know where you're at, and the athletic facilities need to be done. We need a vote, and we need to make a decision. The high school, the middle school, and everything. I agree. I have no problem voting for those. But I also don't think athletic problems should be a kicking ball with this board. We should make a decision what we're going to do. What's going to change? Now, if you got another study, are we going to do away with football? Are we going to do away with field hockey? I don't understand that part about we need to study about where we're going. Those programs aren't going anywhere. And as you said, track got more people. So what's the difference about this new theory? We talked about it, and every time and you said yourself, we were supposed to have a discussion this month, 1st of March, and a vote the end of March. We're going to have that?
So committee of the whole on the 27th is, unless I hear differently, is going to be about picking a way and then getting it on the next agenda for discussion and moving forward.
That's in April then. So we move from March to April.
I mean, Fred, if everybody says right now we're comfortable with option 5 or whatever, then we can probably bring it to the discussion agenda next meeting. So that's what we're asking. Like, are you comfortable with option 5? If we've got enough people comfortable with it, then we can move forward.
Yep.
If we don't have enough people comfortable with it, then we can't move forward.
I thought it was just board comments. I didn't know we'd move in that direction. But yes, I'm comfortable with 5. I was comfortable with 1.
Okay.
You're the superintendent. I'm going to relate to most of what you tell me is necessity, rather than me guessing. So if that's a question, but I want athletics to be done up front because it's been kicked down the years and our kids have been ridiculed and safety-wise and everything else. I want to start. I just want something done, something, a fork or a shovel or a steamroller or something dug in the ground for the school district. I'm just tired of fighting over it. Oh, no, hold on, one more thing. Doc, if we do use a college, what is your vision of us college usage?
So we've explored it. We continue to explore it. We're trying to get a proof of concept game there with a JV game to see how it works. The difficulty is not necessarily the varsity team playing there. The difficulty is all the other football games that we play there. So we need to play somewhere. It's either the park or if we move forward with what was on option 5, we would be able to play all of our JV games and every level of football there, as well as soccer, field hockey. It's all could be played there. The only thing we have to figure out is, which is a separate discussion, is what to do at the park and where to play varsity football. So the university cannot solve all of our facility problems when it comes to athletics. They can help us with the varsity football question. There are equal challenges to pulling that off and equal costs to play there and some trade-offs. We won't be able to play on Friday nights. We would have to play on Saturdays, which is different. You know, and some schools do it. Steel High did it for years. Harrisburg does it currently. So it's not out of the question, but there are a lot of moving parts to it. So it's really 2 questions. Where are we playing varsity football and where are we playing everything else? You know, the facilities that we put on the table tonight answer all those other questions. Then it becomes a narrow decision point once we make that one, that we then make the decision on where to play varsity football. Is it the university or is it the park?
The university, I don't think the university can support every week, from my understanding.
So there are scheduling issues that we have to work out in order to make it work. You know, it's not insurmountable, but it's not like we can just roll into Shippensburg and say we want this date and this time. You know, there are a lot of moving parts with their sports, their intramurals. You know, so it's still viable. That option can still be on the table, but we're really trying to chip away at the problems and finding solutions to move forward. So option 5 moves us forward on athletics in the high school, the middle school, and sets a plan up for the elementaries. So, you know, I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Scott, but
No, just a question. People were asking about the college usage, how much we were going to use it, how much we weren't going to use it. And that's what I want to clarify. And as far as the park, you envision, right now we're set to go do it at the high school, build a stadium at the high school. Are you envisioning banning the Memorial Park, or still use it to practice and other things?
So that's what the K&W study helps tell us. Like what field usage do we need? So I can't, you know, I'm not an expert, but like we already kind of use the park now a lot. Building the facilities that we have on the table is a skinny version of the stadium that we ultimately committed to build. But it gets all the sports but varsity football taken care of. You know, we will probably still have to use the park in order to play some games and to practice. But it also takes, you know, by building that facility, it opens up space at the park.
Yes.
So we still have to have, to my mind, a relationship with the park.
I agree.
At some level. You know, so the K&W study will help inform us with that. But we're trying to move together in one block where we have the opportunity to move forward in different increments to get where we want to go within a rather tight budget. So, you know, my hope was, you know, that the board gives me direction on whether option 5 is the way to go. So the moving part of there isn't movement for realignment changes the decision tree. Okay, so it narrows down what and how we can move forward. So my job with or my goal with option 5 was to put an option on the table that got everybody, that addressed all the concerns. It addressed athletics, it addressed the core problem, core upgrades at the high school, the middle school, and there's a plan for the elementary school. So to my mind, that checks all the boxes that the board has expressed as important to them. I'd love to be able to say we're just going to do it all. We're not able to do that. So, this was the best plan B that I could come up with a decision point around realignment. The message was realignment is off the table, Mr. August. Okay, so here's the plan B. At some point, we have to consider it's not the perfect plan. It's the best plan that we can have to move forward. If option 5 is not what the board wants to do, then we're going to have to go back and try to figure it out. But that was our best guess, sitting in a room with the financials, with the idea that we have to put people in classrooms, and we have to balance a budget. That's just the reality, Mr. Scott. We can't do everything, but we can do something.
I'm 5 is okay with me.
Okay.
It's as far as I'm concerned. That's fine.
Right.
I don't want to talk no more. I want action.
Understood. I think everyone wants that.
Dr. Lyman?
I appreciate Mr. August and Christy going through and creating option 5. I agree that it does tick a lot of the boxes. I didn't hear a lot of positives about realignment from community and teachers, and so it does seem like a good way forward. And I would agree. I think either have the committee of the whole meeting be solely devoted to this so we can move forward, or put it on the discussion agenda if that's where people are. I would be okay with either one.
Thank you. Mr. Suiters?
Well, a lot of the problem was that we were not informed what we really needed in the school district. Because when we did the walkthrough, a lot of things changed that we didn't even know we needed. So that really put us back. But I think we're moving forward. I wished we would have a better understanding with the university and Memorial Park, so we can have the whole community together. I mean, we're a college town. The park's there. It's crazy not to invite that in.
And again, I would say that that's a varsity football separate discussion, Mr. Suiters, that doesn't necessarily have to hold up the rest of what we want to accomplish.
So, Mr. Suiters, are you saying option 5 is something that you could support?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Everly?
So I guess just maybe a recommendation or a suggestion I have is to add a board comment portion to the committee of the whole agenda to ensure that every board member has the opportunity just kind of share, reflect, and provide feedback from what was presented. It seems silly to have a presentation with items that we're going to be voted on and then not have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions.
So I think absolutely the timing of the issue. The timing is the issue. If the board is comfortable with 10 starting the regular board meeting 5-10 minutes late, then a lot of those problems can be solved. There.
And then just to add, so I'm not sure if anyone's heard or are aware that there is a national labor shortage. And Shippensburg has not been exempt to that shortage, so I just want to kind of use my time in this platform to give a shout out to a group of unsung heroes in our district, and those are our caring custodial staff. They're invaluable to this organization, and they are greatly appreciated, and I just want to say thank you, and you're appreciated, and to keep up the hard work.
Thank you. Mrs. Eberly, so on option 5, are you comfortable with that or not yet comfortable?
I'm more so than some of the other. I think that if we could still at least just make sure, because I mean, some of us, everyone, did you share what you were? Did you?
No.
I think that there was some confusion with board comments of like, if you are, or if it was end of board comments, like.
I'm sorry if I caused confusion.
No.
I didn't mean to cause confusion. I just was hoping that we could use our board comments to make our board comments, and in addition to that, give Mr. August feedback on option 5. If we didn't feel like it adequately addressed our concerns, then we need to let him know that. And you can also say, I'm not sure yet. I'll get back to you.
I'm not sure yet. I'll get back to you.
I would second that as well, because I did not say whether I was or not.
Okay. Thank you. First off, I want to mention that you all have a copy of a letter that I received from Drew Alosi, who's with us today, in his role as chair of Shippensburg University Council of Trustees, which emphasizes the continued willingness of Shippensburg University to be a partner to the district in providing facilities for athletics or other kinds of things. And I just encourage you to read through that letter and just yeah, I don't know if you have any questions, bring them up. But I appreciate that sort of renewed interest in collaboration and kind of announcement of being a good partner to us. We've been the district has been a long time partner of the university in a variety of different enterprises, and the university wants to continue that, and it's an excellent resource. And I think that every opportunity that we have to bring our students to a university campus is a positive and good opportunity. So as Mr. August said, there's really kind of like two issues, and the one, there's on the table, we've got this proposal that I believe addresses the facility needs balanced with the amount of money that we have available to use or to put forward to facility needs. And I feel pretty good about option 5. I definitely believe that, I appreciate having a kind of broad vision, which is what I've definitely been hoping for and working towards, is that we have like a kind of broad sense. I mean, we made that middle school decision because the decision making was too hard. It's like we saw that there was so much to do, and we couldn't wrap our heads around it, so we decided, like, okay, what's the one thing that we would do if we couldn't do anything else? And we decided it was the middle school project, and so we initiated that project, and we've been making progress. We could continue that decision-making strategy, but if we do, we could run out of money before we get to some of the more critical things. So that's what I've been trying to work us towards, is to get a kind of big vision of hitting the main points, and I think we're there, or at least getting really close to there. The next piece will be what to do first, right? And I've explained already that I believe that the athletics is highest priority for the next thing to do, but if it fits within like the scope of a broader project, so that we're not spending so much money on athletics that we run out when we get to other things that are important, then I'm good. This isn't my perfect plan. There's differences. I mean, there's different priorities that I would put probably on different things, but I feel like it's a manageable plan that meets the most amount of our needs, and I'm comfortable with it, and I would really like to see us move forward.
Dr. Goetz, if I could ask, so just my math going around the table. Mr. Scott said he was okay with it. I was okay with it. You seem to be okay with it. So did Dr. Lyman and Mr. Suiters. So just tell me, what is our direction like right now? Like now, what is our next step? Because that's what I'm all about. Is like I want to do things. So just tell me what our next step in this whole entire gigantic puzzle is.
Well, I would like to move forward with as much consensus on the board as possible. I think that's important given the length of time that this discussion has happened. I want to make sure every board member feels like they've had an opportunity to vet and get their questions answered. I think in the back end of that, I tried to do that with sending out information and offering meetings. But I think it's important that we continue to have those. I counted to 5 as well. My thought would be, that we've waited this long, 2 more weeks to answer the questions, and get that dialogue going, so that we can get closer to 8-0 or 7-1 or 6-2. I think would be healthy for the board to do. It's a momentous. It's the biggest thing we're going to do in the next 20 years. And so it needs to be done deliberately, and it needs to make sure that people feel good, even if they're against it. So that's my take on it. I know that frustrates people. I would just point out that I've only been here a couple months, and we've already made a lot of progress to getting to a decision point. Okay, so let's understand that the process has worked to get us to a decision point, which I don't believe we were before. So we're at a decision point that we could move forward on, but I want Mr. Bard to feel good about it. I want Mrs. Wolfinger and Mrs. Eberly to both feel like they've been heard and given an opportunity that they've had their say in a public setting. So I would ask for a little bit more patience so that we can have that committee of the whole next week. But understanding that there is a proposal that could move forward. Okay, so with that, unless people change their minds, we could move forward to a discussion item and do, there's some logistical things with the financing and stuff that I have to work out with PFM. But ultimately, if there are 5 votes in the room and that we have a committee of the whole next week where all that time is dedicated to this endeavor, then in 4 weeks, we would be moving the ball forward.
What does moving the ball forward?
So we would put the resolutions and the necessary motions in front of the board for deliberation, and we would go through our process, discussion and approval. Okay, so but it definitely puts us on the train tracks where we want to go.
You're saying next week? You mean next board meeting?
So next board meeting is committee of the whole.
Okay.
Right. You said
That's more discussion.
Yeah. So committee of the whole. I would have to weigh whether or not it makes sense to put that on the agenda. Weighing that I want us to be a healthy and functioning board where everyone's needs are met and they feel good. So I would either say 2 to 4 weeks is where we're at before we're on the train track, Mr. Scott.
When are we going to get to the station? I've been on the track for 4 years. When are we going to get to the station?
Okay, I hear you. I'm just going to remind you, I just got here. Okay. I hear your frustration. I know we've been circling the airport for a long time. We're lining up to make the final approach. Okay, so we're in a process, Mr. Scott. I think you should feel good about that. That we are in a process that is leading us to a decision point, which cannot be said for quite some time. Okay, so let's just embrace that we have a process that we've gone through. We have to finish that process and then get on the tracks.
Since you're driving the train, flying the plane, I got to go along with the flow, but I want to land.
As do I, as do I think everyone here on the board and in the community.
Mr. Kressler, did that answer your question?
Sure did. Thank you.
All right, information, date savers. Again, a reminder that Committee of the Whole begins at 7 p.m., and we've heard a considerable amount about what we can expect in 2 weeks at the Committee of the Whole, and then our board meetings will begin at 8. And I guess I'm just going to take a moment to make a point about that. I mean, Mr. August mentioned that we could have our Committee of the Whole go long if necessary. I think it's very important to have our regular board meetings start on time. So, this has been a learning process. We're trialing this new system. If we feel like that 1 hour isn't long enough for Committee of the Whole, then we need to either shorten the amount of stuff that we're putting in that meeting, or we need to start it earlier, is my opinion. Please don't take a few challenges as evidence of a broken system. I think that we've got a new system. We maybe need to make some revisions and fine tune it, but I'm feeling good about the track that we're on. Sorry, we're using all of the transportation.
A lot of train
metaphors.
imagery here this evening.
Yeah, I'm not on a plane. All right, so these are held here in the high school library. On March 15th, the Policy Committee will meet at 4 p.m. in the conference room in the Administration Building. March 16th is a 2-hour early dismissal. March 17th, no school for teachers and students. March 21st, Safety and Security meeting meets at 4 p.m. in the conference room of the Administration Building. And March 23rd, Evening of Jazz at 7 p.m. in the Sashis Auditorium. March 27th is our next school board evening. March 30th, Transportation Committee, 4 p.m. March 5th, Policy Committee meeting again at 4 p.m. March 6th, 2-hour early dismissal. We're getting to April now. And I'm not going to continue to read these dates, but the dates are available in the agenda if you need to see them, those dates that are more than 2 weeks out. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Fred Scott seconds.
Meeting adjourned.